What's going on, everybody? Kalipa's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons to buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 in 2022. Now before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps with the channel a lot. And if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my full review of it and tips and tricks videos as well. And of course, for the latest up-to-date info on pricing and availability, I will be linking to this phone in the video description, so definitely check that out because this is always changing. But with all that being said, let's get started. So the first reason to buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 in 2022 is the battery. Now this phone has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 10 watt fast charging. So this is pretty much the biggest battery you can get in a smartphone. Now you might technically be able to find a phone or two with a larger battery, but it's probably going to be an international phone or from a more obscure brand. But as far as this phone goes, with a 5000 mAh battery, you're going to get a ton of battery life throughout the day. In fact, it's probably going to last for multiple days. So no matter what you're doing on your phone, if you have to use it constantly and you can't be around a charger at all times, you still won't have to worry about your phone running out of power during the day. Another advantage to having such a large battery is that since you're starting out with so much more battery life than you need, as the battery degrades and its life per charge starts to get a little bit shorter, it's not going to really affect you nearly as quickly as it would with a smaller battery. And of course, the 10 watt fast charging never hurts either. The only thing this phone doesn't have that I wish it did is wireless charging, but it's not really that big a deal since wireless charging currently isn't very common in phones that aren't flagship phones anyway. My second reason to buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 in 2022 is the display. With this phone, we're getting a 6.8-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 396, an aspect ratio of 20.5 by 9, and a screen-to-body ratio of about 84.6%. So this is a really good display in so many ways. First of all, the most obvious one, the display is really large at 6.8 inches, definitely one of the largest displays you can get. In fact, there are lots of flagship phones, like the iPhone 13 Pro Max for example, that are even a little smaller than this. So that just goes to show that if you want a phone with a large display, the Moto G Stylus 2022 is a great option. Having a large display, of course, is going to be great for content consumption because things are going to show up larger and be easier to see in general. So it's going to be awesome if you're doing something like reading, or if you're streaming videos. It's all just going to look really good. Now, in addition to the display itself being larger, we're also getting a slightly taller form factor than its predecessor, the Moto G Stylus 2021. And this is going to give videos a more cinematic look, and if you're reading, you're going to be able to fit more on the screen without scrolling as much. So I'm definitely happy with the size and the dimensions of this display. Another great thing about this display is the quality itself. There are lots of phones out there with really large displays, but the quality might not be the greatest. Sometimes they only have 720p displays, sometimes they're just super dim, but with this phone, we're getting a really nice 1080p resolution with a super sharp, crisp image, and in addition to that, the colors look nice and bold as well. In fact, even the viewing angles are actually pretty decent. Now they're not the best compared to something like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE with a dynamic AMOLED display. Of course, it's not going to be that level, but for a mid-range phone, this display is really bright and it looks really nice overall. And of course, last but not least, this display has a 90Hz refresh rate, which is going to make the movement on the screen a little bit faster and smoother. Now the difference, of course, in this video isn't going to be super obvious, but when you're actually using the phone, especially for something like content consumption, you're going to get a much nicer experience. In addition to that, when you're just navigating through the phone, the 90Hz display is going to give it a little bit more of a premium feel. Now my third reason to buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 in 2022 is the storage. This phone is getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so this is definitely a great amount of storage. Honestly, in this day and age, even if you're not a power user, storage is one thing that you really can't get too much of. With stuff like apps, the system, and just data in general getting larger and larger as time goes on and taking up more space, smaller amounts of storage like 32GB are really just not gonna cut it anymore. So having 128 in this phone is definitely a really nice advantage. For the average user, you're probably never even going to have to think about storage, and you probably won't need a microSD card either unless you really want one. Even if you're a power user and have lots of apps and photos and videos and that sort of thing, you can just put a micro SD card in this phone and expand it even more. To give you an idea of what this kind of storage looks like, with this phone, I'm taking up 32.82 gigabytes right now, and that's only 26% of the entire storage. As you can see, the system takes up the most with 21 gigabytes, and then I got some apps and games as well. So whether you're a power user or just an average user who doesn't do a whole lot with your phone, having a phone like the Moto G Stylus 2022 with so much storage is going to be a good thing no matter what. My fourth reason to buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 in 2022 is the camera. Now to give you a quick rundown on the setup, we got a 16 megapixel front-facing camera here, hole punch design, real nice looking. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera that doubles as a macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. Now one thing I want to go back to real quick is the ultra-wide camera and the macro camera. I've actually never seen this before on any other phone, but the ultra-wide camera does double as a macro camera. Motorola's website goes into a little more detail about this, but I do think it's really cool. But in general, I am really happy with this setup. Not only are we getting a really powerful 50 megapixel main camera, but we're also getting all the other features like the ultra-wide camera, macro camera, and pretty much just everything. And not only that, but this phone does take really good photos, so take a look. These are a couple photos taken with the main camera. As you can see, they're really high quality. The colors look really nice. The photos are decently bright. Everything looks good and I really don't have any complaints. So if you're taking lots of photos for social media or just sending to friends and family, stuff like that, this phone is definitely going to get the job done. Now these are a couple photos taken with the ultra-wide camera. Again, really nice looking, pretty much just as good quality as the main camera. Usually with ultra-wide cameras, especially in these mid-range phones, there's a lot more distortion around the edges, but here it actually looks really nice. So if the ultra-wide camera is a feature that you really like and you want a really good one, then the Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to be a good option. Now here's a photo taken with portrait mode. Again, really high quality. I have no complaints here. The background is blurred really nicely, and it's not super choppy to the point where it looks like a green screen or anything. It just looks like a really nice, professional, high quality photo. So if you really like portrait mode, I know a lot of people use portrait mode photos for social media and stuff like that, then this phone is going to get the job done real well. Now this is a photo taken with the macro camera, and it came out surprisingly well. To be perfectly honest, there are very few macro cameras that have actually impressed me. Most of them are super grainy and it just feels useless because if you have a phone like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE for example with the telephoto lens, or even just an old flagship phone with a good quality camera, you can just zoom in and get the same effect. But with this phone, you actually do get that macro camera look, and you can get some real nice close-up detailed images. Now for video, it's really nothing spectacular. We're only getting 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, which is a little bit of a disappointment since the Moto G Stylus 2021 actually had 4K in the rear camera. But at least when it comes to photos, this phone is really good, probably among the best in mid-range phones that I've seen so far in 2022. Now my fifth reason to buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 in 2022 is the software. Now as far as the actual edition of Android itself, this phone does have Android 11 and is probably going to get Android 12 at some point. So if it's important to you to have the latest version of Android as it comes out, then this actually might be a little bit of a disappointment. But the reason I really like the software on this phone is because I personally really like Motorola's skin. It has a ton of different features, like for example, not one, but two different ways to access the camera. So you could go like this, or you could go like this. All kinds of gestures, and it just runs really smoothly. Now these are all little things, but when you're actually using the phone, despite not yet having the latest version of Android, this phone really runs smoothly on the software it has. So if you want a phone that's really reliable and isn't going to give you any weird bugs when you're using it, then the Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to be a great option. But those were 5 reasons to buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 in 2022. Overall, out of all the newer phones that have come out so far, this phone is definitely one of my favorites. Sure, it might not have the fastest processor in the world, the latest version of Android, or a bunch of fancy high-end features, but if you're looking for a regular phone that can do the basics and then some, then the Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to be a great option. Now once again, if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my tips and tricks videos and my full review of it as well. And for the latest up-to-date info on pricing and availability, be sure to check out the link in the video description because this is always changing. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, but I will see you in the next video.